Dog Called Calgary. Being new to Berlin and new to this apartment building, the knock on my door was something of a surprise. I open the door and there's my neighbour. Ben, could I borrow your toolbox? Sure. I go in, I come back, and I hand her a hammer. She says, "That's not a toolbox, that's a hammer." I say, "It's my toolbox." She looks at me with this look of half disgust and half contempt. And she says, "What sort of a man are you?" Australia is not the best place to grow up when you're not very good with your hands, because in Australia, notions of masculinity and manhood revolve around one measure only. How good are you with your hands? Can you fix stuff? Can you make stuff? And can you fight? And for me, the answer to each of those questions is no. I can't. The evidence of my failure as a man came out early. At age 3 or 4, I'd be woken by my little sister who would get me out of bed, dress herself, and then dress me, because at 3 or 4, I couldn't work out my buttons. My first day at kindergarten, I come home from kindergarten absolutely distraught. "Mum, Mum, Mum, they made us do finger painting." And what's the problem with that? I got my fingers dirty. And at school, it didn't get any better. We had compulsory woodwork, and for woodwork, they made us make a letter opener, as if Australia was returning to Victorian England. "Darcy, would you avail me of my letter opener? A letter from the Duke." A letter opener is not much use, and mine even less use, because it didn't look like a letter opener. It looked like one of those makeshift weapons you see in prison documentaries found in the cell when they do the cell search. And having made this, you have to take it to the teacher to get a grade, and I took mine to the teacher and handed him the letter opener, and the teacher looks at the letter opener, and looks at me, and looks at the letter opener, and looks at me, and he says, "McGuire, I think you should stick to the books." I didn't fare any better in love. 16, 17, my first real girlfriend, and I pluck up the courage to hold her hand. And she takes her hand and she lifts it, and I'm thinking, "Oh, this is love." She says, "Ben, your hands are so soft." So I leave my teens with this conception of myself as a failure. My hands in particular have failed me. They're big, but they're useless. They're big and they're soft. I go to university in Canada, 1997, and between terms I'm working at a holiday centre for disabled kids. And on this last week of the summer, it's a special week reserved for kids with Down syndrome. And I don't know how much experience you've had with kids with Down syndrome, but they are so full of energy and so full of love. I've never in one week had so many hugs. And I've never in one week heard so many renditions of this song. "If you want to be my lover, gotta get with my friends." Yes, the Spice Girls, they decided they would give us a concert, the staff a concert, and the entire week they choreographed it and they rehearsed it. The entire week. At the end of the week and the end of the 3 months, I was so exhausted that I felt I needed a break. I had 2 weeks until university started again, and I had what I thought was 14 days to kill. If I could go back and tell that 21-year-old, "You dumb shit, never, ever killed 14 days. 14 days are so precious." I bought myself a second-hand bike, and I rustled up a tent, and I started riding from Vancouver to Calgary. 1,400 kilometres, 14 days, 14 nights, and therefore 14 campfires. The first day was the most challenging. Most of it was uphill, and I had not one puncture, not 2, not 3, 4, 5, but 6 punctures. Worst nightmare for a man who can't fix things. I make it by the end of the first day to a town ironically called Hope. Just outside Hope, there's an artisan who's set up his table, and on the table are these beautiful wood carvings. And I stop and I say to him, "I can't buy a carving, but would you sell me a carving knife and a block of wood? And he says, yes, here's one. And he hands me this block of wood. I was going to make a dog out of this. Can you see the dog in this? Well, I kind of couldn't, but I thought to myself, what was Michelangelo's answer when somebody said to him, how did you carve David? And he apocryphally said, I just chipped away anything that wasn't David. So as I sat at my campfire night after night, I just started chipping away this block, chipping away everything that wasn't a dog. And slowly, a miracle emerged. This block started to look like a dog. And it wasn't just that miracle. There was also something to do with me. As I chipped away at that and carved, I felt like I was chipping away at this conception of myself as a man with useless hands. I was carving myself a new identity. And as this trip continued, as I got closer and closer and closer to Calgary, the thing looked more and more and more like a dog. And I was more and more nervous. What if I mess it up from here? And in little towns, I would stop and buy sandpaper and then Danish oil and polished and sanded and polished and sanded until the last day, sitting in Calgary by the river, I finished this dog because it's important to me that this journey for the dog and for me has to be finished in Calgary. And I hold it up. And there it is. It's a dog. Recognisably a dog. I'm not claiming to be Auguste Rodin, but it's a dog. I named it Calgary. I had an ice cream to celebrate, went to the airport, flew back to Vancouver, and posted this Calgary dog to my grandmother back in Australia. At the time, she was 79, and she put Calgary up on the windowsill. And Calgary looked over her like some guard dog for 21 years. She's now 100. She talks to Calgary. And she told me in talking to Calgary, she feels closer to me because I've lived overseas. And I imagine her there, pottering away in her kitchen, talking to Calgary, and through talking to Calgary, talking to me. And I wonder now, when she dies, which will be soon, she's 100, what's going to happen to this dog? What's going to happen to Calgary? He'll probably end up on the dump somewhere, but it's not really about that piece of wood, because for me, he's served his purpose. He became a conduit through which I began to understand myself in a new way. And he became a conduit for a 21-year-long conversation between my grandmother and her absent grandson. As my neighbour hands me back the hammer, I close the door and say, I'm sorry, I couldn't help you with the toolbox. And it was Calgary that I think of, because it was Calgary that gave me the answer to her question. What sort of a man am I? I'm a man without a toolbox. My tools are other. And it's taken me a long, long time to realise. But I can live with that. Thank you.